So, is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer any good? Is this something that you should spend your time checking out or playing? This video is going to help you decide whether this game is right for you. I've spent a good amount of time with this game now, and I feel like I'm really dialed in on what kinds of gamers are going to enjoy this experience and maybe what aren't. We're going to talk about both the good and the bad about this multiplayer. And while I'm inclined to say this is just a beta, so take everything with a grain of salt, Call of Duty betas these days are basically just small demo versions of the full game. So while there may be some small things that get tweaked, obviously, a lot is still going to change in terms of like UI, maybe kill streaks, guns, that sort of thing. In terms of the core fundamentals, these are pretty much already set in stone, despite it being a beta. So this is a pretty good representation of what the full game is going to be like. So with that being said, let's start about what's good about this multiplayer. First things first, I have to say, visually, the game looks incredible. Just looking at the game from a visceral perspective, it's got a lot more of a poppy, saturated color palette compared to original Modern Warfare in 2019. I'm going to be making a lot of comparisons to that game, and so in particular, this game's color is really nice. It's not so like drab and dreary and gray as that game was. It wasn't too bad in 2019, but it's much better here. It's like a pretty good balance between color and realism. And not just in terms of color palette, but even the way that lighting is handled is great in this game, and they made a big deal about that before this game came out. But I have to say, there's also a lot less clutter and what I'm going to call visual noise around the maps. If you've played Modern Warfare 2019, it seems like a lot of the maps, while they look realistic, there's so many like unnecessary textures that just clutter up the screen. Again, it's visual noise, doesn't need to be there, may as well be something like static, and a lot of that has been removed from MW2. It's like very clean and to the point, feels a lot more like, those classic COD maps where they were visually very stripped down. While they still look nice in this game, there's not as much going on in terms of visual noise with most of the maps. And visuals go hand in hand with talking about how the game feels. This is probably the most important thing just for the general audience to consider and for you to think about if this game is right for you. How does the game feel? If I had to put it as accurately as possible, I would say this is a more arcadey version of Modern Warfare 2019. In the sense that not only just from the gameplay pace, like MW 2019 was a bit more tactical, it was slightly slower pace, and while there were faster elements, this is cranked up to 11 in MW2. Not only is it arcadey in terms of the pace and like general movement, but also the UI. Like the UI and like pop-ups, killstreak medals, stuff like that is extremely arcadey. This is kind of a silly metaphor, but the game feels like if you took Modern Warfare 2019, put it in a blender, and added a couple of drops into the batter from Black Ops 2, and I guess that is the best way to describe how the game actually feels. So if you feel like that's something that's right for you, then you'll probably enjoy it just in terms of just a core gameplay experience. And you can't talk about how the game feels without discussing movement, and I know movement is important to a lot of you guys, as it is very much to me. In terms of how you fundamentally interact with the game, movement is like the #1 feature, and so how does it feel in MW2? Well, as stated before, if you watched my last video, there is no more slide canceling, which was basically like the go-to tech for Modern Warfare 2019. Now, I have to be transparent, I really was a fan of the slide cancel mechanics. I thought it added a lot of interesting depth to the core gameplay. There was people that could use it really well, and like it was always fun to watch. And for me personally, it was something I loved getting good at and trying to learn and utilize in my games as proficiently as I could. It was just something to keep grinding for and like attempting to get better at the game. And I thought the removal of slide canceling, as it does not appear whatsoever in Modern Warfare 2. You can slide, but there is no way to use it in any like canceling method or anything like that, right? There's really no tech with it anymore. And I thought that was going to be a big turnoff to me, and a lot of you who are slide canceled fans will probably be disappointed to hear that news. However, even though there's no slide canceling, there still is enough like pace in the gameplay and enough tech in and of itself through things like the bunny hop that it still feels interesting to play. Like movement's a big thing for me, and I thought that if it was just Modern Warfare 2019 but with no slide canceling, it was going to feel really clunky and awkward. But thankfully, it doesn't really play like that. In this game, the way you utilize your jump is actually far more important than how you use your slide. The slide is almost useless now. It's pretty much like the Call of Duty Ghost slide. It has almost no contextual like application at all, and I found myself jumping way more than I did sliding, which is different to get used to. You have to play this game almost the opposite way you would approach approach Modern Warfare 2019, which is not really a bad thing. It's a good switch up, but it's just something to, you're gonna have to break the muscle memory of it for sure. But jumping is far more effective now than sliding. So I think this was their attempt to satisfy both communities. Players that like the slide cancel, don't worry, there's still some interesting tech in the game, and people that got sick of slide canceling, don't worry, it's not there anymore. So I think this is the best compromise for both sides of the table. Now, I want to talk about the gun attachment progression system, because we spoke about Gunsmith yesterday and the new updates to it, and it was kind of confusing at first, so I think a lot of people are still unclear about exactly how it works. I have to say, how it actually functions in-game when you're playing it is excellent. I'm not kidding. Like, it's actually very well done. You essentially rank up a family of guns, and you get attachments that can be applicable to that entire family of guns. So it's like, let's say you want to try a brand new weapon. It really sucks, of course, when you have to just use the base variant of that gun, and you know everyone else in the game by that point has the, you know, optimized attachments. It feels like you're fighting an uphill battle. That no longer is the problem for most guns. You rank one up and it'll go for all the others. It's really well done in this game, and I think it still maintains that sense of progression that Call of Duty is known for, and they did an excellent job on it. Now, also in the good, the kill streaks in this game are excellent. It would be a literal crime scene to have a game called Modern Warfare 2 that didn't have good kill streaks. And thankfully, you know, they're very similar to ones that we've gotten from, you know, previous Modern Warfare games, and even Modern Warfare 2019 is probably the best comparison, although it does seem to be these are a bit more impactful in this game, which they should be. Now, here's the coolest part though, and I didn't really realize this until like a couple hours into my play session. You can actually change the system from kill streaks to score streaks with the flip of a button. So for example, you're playing TDM, you want your things to be kill streaks. You can set it on that, and then maybe you go play domination or some other score-based objective mode, and you would prefer score streaks instead. You can actually switch it to that in between games. It's absolutely such a good idea. It seems so obvious. I don't know how it took Call of Duty that long to come up with that, but let's talk about perks next. And this is one of the weirdest systems they've had in the game, and I didn't expect to like it, to be quite honest, but I have to say, after spending some time like playing the game and just getting experience with it, I'm a big fan. Like, it feels that as you play the game, you get rewarded not only through kill streaks, but by earning your perks. So this tackles probably the weakest point of Call of Duty's core gameplay loop, and that is the fact that the only core reward in the gameplay, let's say, is getting kills and kill streaks, essentially. And this, you get rewarded through perks by playing the game, playing the objective, and getting kills, obviously, but it's like something else to earn besides kill streaks that actually feels pretty good in game. Like, if you haven't played it yet, just wait until you do, and you'll see what I mean. But I won't get too deep into that because it's kind of complicated. It has to do with skill-based matchmaking too, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I bring all that up to say, the perk system might seem kind of weird on paper, but it actually tackles one of Call of Duty's biggest problems with its core gameplay, which I think is extremely smart. But anyways, also speaking of the good, the entire created class and progression is the Call of Duty you know and love, with a couple of minor tweaks. Obviously, it feels a little different because it's a new game, but at the end of the day, it's the core COD progression that we all fell in love with, you know, back in the day. And also, I have to mention, as a small thing, the UI in general is pretty intuitive, like the menus, that kind of thing, and building your classes, getting in games, just like the general practical ways you're going to interact with the game when you're not actually, you know, in the map shooting enemies is very well thought out and executed so far. So big props for that. And the last thing in the good before we move on to the bad, and probably what you guys want to hear most, but just in general, looking back at an eagle-eye view, the core gameplay and just how the game feels and how fun it is very, very good. Like, this is exactly, I think, the sort of thing that people needed to play. And this is going to sound kind of weird to say, but in terms of like movement and just how the game feels, even the maps, this feels like the game that Call of Duty Ghosts wanted to be. I know that sounds kind of strange to say, and I've gone on record saying I don't particularly like Ghosts anyways, so it sounds weird to make that comparison in a positive way, but what I'm saying is it feels like the game that Ghosts was aspiring to be, and I think that Modern Warfare 2 really nailed it when it comes to like just that feeling. And again, it just, at the end of the day, is a more arcadey version of Modern Warfare 2019. So if that suits your fancy, you're gonna love this game. But as all that stuff is great, there are some things that are not, and there is quite a lot of bad with this multiplayer as well, which I'm sure is a lot of what you guys want to hear. But hopefully this can at least be addressed before the full game comes out, or at least, you know, we can become more aware of these things. But again, it's not all good. Let's talk about the bad. Now, I guess I have to say for this one, I don't know if I would necessarily put it in the bad, although it's not in the good either, so I'm going to put it as the buffer between what's good and bad. The maps are all over the place. There are some really good ones, and obviously this is a beta, so there's only 4 maps for us to play, and 2 of them are really good, and the other 2 are actually what I would consider to be pretty low tier, like pretty bad, honestly. You have this like bright cartel map that's like really well designed. It's an extremely classic COD map. That one's great. You also have Farm 18, which is a very good map as well. Feels like a classic Modern Warfare 2 map. But then you have the museum, which is not, I don't know if I would consider it to be that bad, but there is a lot of wasted space. There's some weird choices, and this feels like a pretty like mid-tier map, if I had to say. It's not great. And then you have the hotel, which is genuinely a bottom-tier garbage map. Like, that is a Call of Duty Ghost map, and that is not a compliment. But yeah, I don't want to harp on maps too hard because it is a beta. Maps could change a little bit, and obviously there's going to be a bunch more added that we haven't played yet. So if that's representative of what is going to be the entire package of the full game, then we're probably going to have a mixed bag of pretty good and some bad maps. Now, something I would consider truly to be in the bad, while I like the Gunsmith ideas, and a lot of the customization is cool, don't get me wrong, my biggest fear with that system is kind of coming true, and that is the fear that every gun is more or less the same thing, or that there may as well be one gun in the game. What I mean is, like, there may as well be one weapon type per class. So one assault rifle, for example, one SMG, one shotgun, one sniper, etc. And then through attachments is how you make it feel and play different, and pretty much accomplishes the same thing. You don't even need the other guns. What I'm trying to say is the like different assault rifles, with how much you can customize them and the depth of like gun tuning and all that, there may as well be no other weapons, because everything is everything else, if that makes any sense. An SMG can be an AR can be an SMG, an LMG can be an SMG, and so on. Like, every gun is more or less the same based on how you run the attachments. And while that might lead to some interesting experimentation, guns don't have that much of an identity anymore. So unfortunately, while they put a lot of love into the weapons in this game, and I'm sure they did, with every gun feeling so malleable, there's like no consistent feel for what any gun is actually supposed to be like. And I'm not really in love with that, if I'm being honest. Another negative thing, I have to bring it up, people are going to get annoyed about skill-based matchmaking in this game. It's just going to happen. And this ties back to what I was talking about with the perk system. The perk system, in a weird roundabout way, is trying to mitigate that problem. And if that doesn't make any sense, I'm not going to explain it because it's a lot in this video, but I've given my full take on skill-based matchmaking, and if you want to hear it, I'm going to leave a link in the description to my full explanation. So I recommend you go check that out, because I don't think skill-based matchmaking, I don't think you dislike it for the reason you think. But I can already tell you that's something people are going to bring up. It's going to be an issue, and folks are going to get annoyed with it, but that's all I'll say. Also, in the bad, the new ledge hang mechanic is completely useless, and while they spent a lot of time on this, and again, sounds really neat on paper, the idea is like you can peek over a ledge without exposing your whole body and shoot with a pistol over top of it. That sounds great, and I've tried it in-game, but the problem is, usually when you're in that situation, there's a platform that you can stand on that's, you know, in relative close proximity, where you can still get the same angle you want to hold, but you can use your primary weapon and not have to hang on the ledge at all, because when you're ledge hanging, you know, you can't use like your AR or your SMG. It just doesn't happen. So the ledge hang, I think, is going to be very sparingly used, if at all, by the general public. Also in the bad, there is some very corny equipment that is going to be just, I know is going to bother me. It's going to be extremely easy to camp for some people and just like play the most like annoying play styles. But I will say there are a lot of tools, not only in terms of equipment and like guns and stuff like that, but just player movement. There's a lot of like techniques and methods to deal with campers, which is like, you know, every COD game is going to have campers, but what I think separates them is the tools that it gives you to counter them. And in Modern Warfare 2, to be honest, there's a pretty good amount of ways to counter campers. We'll see what happens when the full game comes out, but in terms of like corny playstyles, they're going to exist, they're going to be there, but there are methods of dealing with them, which I think is ultimately a positive thing. And also in the bad, this is going to sound extremely nitpicky, but I promise, I don't know, I feel like it's more important than a lot of people think, but the text and the animation of the kill pop-ups, I don't think it's bad, but I think it could be better. So what I mean is, like, I think some of the most satisfying Call of Duty games ever have had the, like, giant yellow pop-ups. Like, think of Modern Warfare, think of Black Ops 1. When you get a kill, it should be, like, really apparent and almost, like, over the top. In this game, it's even like kind of nerfed down from Modern Warfare 2019, where it's just like this kind of low-key white pop-up. It kind of reminds me of Call of Duty Ghosts or like Infinite Warfare. It isn't that like apparent. And even if there's a lot of smoke on the battlefield, or there's a lot of like white light, or even pavement reflection, it's kind of hard to see sometimes. So if anybody at Infinity Ward is watching this, before the full game comes out, please strongly consider either making that kill pop-up larger, changing the color of it, or just making it a bit more poppy and dramatic. Like, I do feel like that's an important part of just the user experience of how it feels to get a kill in Call of Duty. And right now in MW2, for all it's made out to be this like really over-the-top arcade version of Modern Warfare, I think it needs to go just a little bit of a step farther with that. And they did it, like, you guys did it great in Modern Warfare 2019. That yellow pop-up is amazing, and I think this one does need to be seriously looked at least a little bit. And then finally in the bad, I think gun balance is going to be questionable when the game releases, especially because of this like really malleable attachment system. And I think that's going to require some fine tuning when the game actually does release. Like, I don't think we can even tackle that in a beta. So that's something we're going to have to deal with when it does come out, which is unfortunate, but it's probably going to have to happen. But anyways, in conclusion, what do I think about Modern Warfare 2? What is like my final take on it? I believe that if you like Modern Warfare 2019, but you also are craving a bit more of that like classic COD arcadey feel, then this is literally the perfect game for you. It's actually like a perfect cut. And if you're looking for like a really old school Call of Duty game, like a COD 4, that kind of thing, this is probably not going to suit you all that well. It's a little bit more modern than maybe what you would expect or want from a game like that, if that's what you're looking for. Good fundamentals, I think, with MW2, and with some more like care and attention to detail, should actually be a very solid game for multiplayer, and we'll see how that translates over to the rest of the game, and then Warzone 2 and all that stuff. But I thoroughly enjoyed myself with the core gameplay. It has a couple things that I would change, but all in all, it's a very solid start. So I think they did a good job. But I'm very curious what you guys think down below. Do you think the game looks good? Was there anything you would change? Please let me know your opinions. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you're brand new. I would greatly appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy. Peace out.